His commentary and analysis is among the best, bar none. His words serve as a masterclass. He deconstructs the deceptions of the PSYOP war. He is the author of The Greatness Awaits You, the national leader of Australia One Party Incorporated, a monthly panel participant in JMC's Global Defense War, in a league of his own, an international treasure, a follower of Jesus Christ. He is Ricardo Bossi. Ricardo Bossi is a published author and speaker, international business consultant, former Australian Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel, having served 24 years in the Australian Army, including postings to the Special Air Service Regiment, the 1st Commando Regiment, Headquarters Special Operations, and the U.S. Combined Joint Task Force Headquarters in Kuwait. Don't miss JMC Broadcasting's Bossi Briefs, where John sits down with Ricardo, helping to connect the dots, making sense of the madness, keeping us all grounded and united as the battle between good and evil play out before our very eyes. Join John and Ricardo every other Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here at jmcbroadcasting.com.
June 12th, 2026. Hello, I am John Michael Chambers, and welcome to this special broadcast with retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi, founder of A1. Today, we feature an important, very important presentation for the world to listen to, with a particular focus on Australia, by Ricardo, titled The Rebirth of a Great Nation, Episode 4, Population. We'll be getting into that. For those just coming aboard, who is Ricardo Bossi? Ricardo Bossi is an international treasure, former Australian Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel who served 24 years in the Australian Army. He's the national leader of Australia One Party, a regular panel guest, now in our second year on the Global Defense War. We feature that monthly. And of course, the popular Bossi Briefs, where Ricardo and I sit down every other Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, bringing you the recap of the events as they are unfolding here in America, Australia, and throughout the world. So please welcome Ricardo Bossi.
Hey, John, good to be here.
Good to see you, sir. I know you have an important message to get across to the world, and particularly with a focus on Australia. So I'm going to turn the reins over to you, sir. You take it from here, and I'll recap out at the end of the show to sign us off officially. But thank you, sir, for everything you're doing. Take it away from here.
Thanks, John. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. This is a bit of an exception, and John's kindly allowed us to kick off this particular episode. This is episode 4 of a 21-part series called The Rebirth of a Great Nation. And it is our plan, Australia One's plan, to take what we have and decide for ourselves what our future will be. Now, this is important for the world because this applies to every nation. And whilst the data here specifically relates to our country and our problems and our benefits and our strengths and our weaknesses, everyone, every nation, as has been stated by President Donald J. Trump, everyone is responsible for their country to make it the best country they possibly can. So having said that, let's kick off. Now, this is a very data-heavy presentation, but that's important because crooked politicians forever have always constrained us by making silly platitudes when trying to get elected along the lines of better roads, more jobs. But they never treat the people with the intelligence that they have to understand the complexity of the issues at stake and then have the capacity then to discern the best way forward. And so this 21-part series takes us through all the elements of national power, as you'll see shortly, and how best to manipulate, use, employ all of those elements of national power to create the world that we want. So having said that, let's now move on. And away we go.
I come from the dream time, from the dusty red soil plains, I am the ancient heart, the keeper of the flame. I stood upon the rocky shore, I watched the tall ships come. For 40,000 years I've been the first Australian. I came upon the prison ship, bound down by iron chains. I fought the land, endured the lash, and waited for the rains. I'm a settler, I'm a farmer's wife, on a dry and barren run. A convict, then a free man, I became Australian.
I'm the daughter of a digger who sought the mother law. The girl became a woman on the long and dusty road. I'm a child of the depression, I saw the good times come. I'm a bushy, I'm a battler, I am Australian. We are one, but we are many, and from all the lands on earth we come. We'll share a dream and sing with one voice. I am, you are, we are Australian.
I'm a teller of stories, I'm a singer of songs. I am Albert Navajira, and I paint the ghostly guns. I'm Clancy on his horse, I'm Ned Kelly on the run. I'm the one who walks Matilda, I am Australia.
I'm the hot wind from the desert, I'm the black sun of the plains. I'm the mountains and the valleys, I'm the drought and flooding rain. I am the rock, I am the sky, the rivers when they run, the spirit of this great land. I am Australian. We are one, but we are many, and from all the lands on earth we come. We'll share a dream and sing with one voice. I am, you are, we are Australian. We are one, but we are many, and from all the lands on earth we come. We'll share a dream and sing with one voice. I am, you are, we are Australian. I am, you are, we are Australian.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us here for the Rebirth of a Great Nation, Episode 4, Population. Before we continue, let us review the preamble to our program and our methodology so you understand how we do what we do. We, the current generations of early 21st century Australia, are ever mindful of the sacrifice in blood, in sweat, in tears, and in treasure by the natives, sailors, soldiers, convicts, and free people from many lands who preceded us into this great southern land and who carved a home for all of us from this harsh and unforgiving continent, as they were by their cultural inheritance, which was bequeathed to them by ancient civilizations and centuries by men and women of courage, of wisdom, of faith, and of love. They created by their unrelenting determination a new and unique people and a new and unique nation, whose contribution to the peace and prosperity of the world's family of nations over a brief 2.5 centuries is disproportionately greater than any reasonable person could have expected from such inauspicious and humble origins. It would therefore be an egregious insult to our heroic forebears if we were to permit, either by commission or by omission, intent or neglect, the alteration or degradation of the very foundations upon which our great nation rests. At this moment, such is the circumstance at which we have arrived. Our morality is debased, our sovereignty is a lie, our self-reliance non-existent, our Christianity in the hands of evil, our Western democratic ideals ridiculed, our economic power waning, our military impotent, our political freedom crushed, our culture barbaric, and our society divided. Is it so? On the 27th of April 1961, President of the United States John F. Kennedy told us, "For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. A system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations." To do. Fortunately for us, the tribulations of war required to destroy this monolithic and ruthless conspiracy have been the responsibilities of a great global military alliance under the leadership of President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. What is left for us to do are the great labors of peace. All of us, not only here in Australia, but in every country around the world, must ask ourselves two questions. Who are we to be, and how we are to live? To determine our national destiny, we in Australia One have chosen to preserve the best of our past while establishing and maintaining control over our future through an identity-first great power strategy. Our intention. Purpose: to create a new Australian nation state. Method: the Australian nation, that is the people, to design a constitution for the governance of their Australian state, the legal and political apparatus. Each of the 19 elements of national power to determine the optimal policies which will deliver a moral, sovereign, self-reliant Christian Western constitutional republic, which is economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, and socially cohesive. We'll be identifying the constitutional elements which authorize such policies and identifying the constraints and restraints which specifically prescribe and proscribe constitutional powers and limits. The end state: Australia, maintains and strengthens its identity as a Christian, Western, Anglophone, identity first, and establishes itself as an Indo-Pacific regional hegemony with global leverage to shape normative, a great power. Technology, very quickly. Across the top, we'll be looking at the elements of national power, seeing how they can inform our national end state, apply them through the driving strategy, and that leaves us with a political and legal apparatus of the state, the Constitution. And the elements of national power, 19 that we've identified: tangible, intangible, and hybrid. And each one of those needs to contribute to the elements of the national end state, which you've seen there, driven by our identity first great power strategy. What about the people? Exactly the same question that the Americans asked of their founding fathers when the Federalists produced the Constitution. They said, we want a few things written in there, thanks very much. And the Constitutionalists, the Federalists said, we can derive it from the top down. And the people said, no, we're not that silly. We know how this game works. We want a few things written in there. Initially, the Federalists resisted that. But in time, and it was Madison that led the charge, saw the value in their concerns. And these concerns were specifically and restraints. Constraints, things that the Constitution must do, and restraints, the things the Constitution must not do. These constraints and restraints became the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, and that provided the Constitution. We'll be following that same example. So tonight, episode 4, population. We'll look at definitions and descriptions, national power, a definitional expansion, a practical implication of the same, population, the definition as an element of national power, and expanding on that definition. We'll be looking at the irreducible core and primary multiplier, foundational human substrate, the living reservoir of people, examination of Australia's population, strategies and policies. We'll look at the sub-elements of population, the categories of population sub-elements, and integrated strategies for optimizing population, constitutional authority and constitutional amendments required, analysis of population centre sizes, detailed rationale on the return on investment. National power definitional expansion. National power in the context of the Identity First Great Power National Strategy for Australia is defined as follows. National power is the total and coordinated capacity of the Australian nation state to mobilise, integrate and direct all 19 core elements of national power toward the overriding purpose of establishing and preserving Australia as a moral, sovereign, self-reliant, Christian, Western, constitutional republic that is economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, and socially cohesive. This is deliberately subordinate to the identity first great power imperative. Every element, whether tangible, intangible, or hybrid, is strategically harnessed and prioritized only insofar as it protects relational Christian, Western, Anglophone identity and advances the Indo-Pacific hegemony and global leverage to shape normative orders. Practical implication. In practice, national power therefore manifests as inward consolidation, relentless alignment of all resources and instruments to reinforce Australia's morality, sovereignty, self-reliance, and internal cohesion against any dilution of its Christian Western character. The outward projection, the generation of hegemonic influence across the Indo-Pacific and credible global leverage to shape international normative orders in ways consistent with Australian values, with a minimal reliance on external patrons. Identity First Great Power strategy treats national power not as a neutral aggregation of capabilities, but as a purposeful, hierarchical system in which no element operates independently of the Australian constitutional republic's defining identity and desired attributes. The result is a self-reinforcing cycle. Identity drives strategy. Strategy mobilises every element. And every element sustains and expands Australia's identity and its hegemonic standing. Population definition as an element of national power. Identity first great power strategy. In the context of this program on national power, particularly Australia as a 21st century Christian Western Anglophone constitutional republic pursuing Indo-Pacific hegemony and global normative influence, population is defined as human substrate of national power, that is, the living reservoir of people whose quantity, at scale, quality, human capital and character, composition, demographic and cultural makeup, distribution, that's a spatial organization, vitality, reproductive, spiritual and adaptive energy, and self-reliance and ownership ethos, productive and economic orientation, determination's capacity to achieve and sustain its end state. Not merely a headcount, but the dynamic integration of demographic mass with physical, mental, emotional, psychological, and spiritual characteristics subordinated entirely to the Australian Republic's identity first great power objectives. Definitional expansion. Irreducible core and primary multiplier. The definition positions population as the irreducible core and primary multiplier of all other elements of national power. It is the biological, cultural, and spiritual soil from which every tangible and intangible capability grows. A correctly constituted population, geography remains empty, resources are underexploited, economies stagnate, militaries lack cohesion, and governments lose legitimacy. Conversely, a well-formed population can overcome geographic limitations, multiply resource value, and project power far beyond raw material indicators. Foundational human substrate. Population is the base layer upon which the entire edifice of the nation is built, analogous to the substrate in which a forest grows. It supplies the raw genetic material, the moral and cultural software, the labor force, the creative intellect, the fighting spirit, and the reproductive continuity of a nation. Elements of national power from geography and natural resources through to leadership, national morale, and scientific technological base ultimately depend on and are filtered through this human foundation. In the context of in-state priorities, the population is the moral people, the Christian people, the Western people, and the socially cohesive people, not merely a supporting input. Reservoir of people. Population is not static data, but a dynamic, self-renewing reservoir. It must be continuously replenished through fertility, formation, and selective inflow while being protected from erosion. This reservoir holds the accumulated human capital, knowledge, skills, virtues, memories, and spiritual orientation of generations. This accumulated human capital, the nation's latent capability, which has been won at great cost in blood and treasure, rather than being treated as an economic commodity or interchangeable labor pool, must be nurtured as a sacred trust. Population as an element of national power is the active guardian and embodiment of the entire national strategy. This definitional expansion makes clear that population is the master variable of the entire national project. Sub-elements of population. Total population size and scale. Rate of population growth, natural increase, fertility and mortality components. Projected population trends and momentum. Age structure and distribution, including working age proportion, youth bulge, and dependency ratios. Sex ratio and gender distribution across age cohorts. Overall population density and carrying capacity implications. Urban-rural population distribution and balance. Regional and spatial distribution patterns within national territory. Internal migration flows and settlement concentration. Cultural, including history and ancestral group composition. Linguistic composition and major language group proportions. Religious confessional composition and affiliations. Net international migration rates and foreign-born population share. Size, distribution, and engagement potential of overseas diaspora communities, productive and demographic replacement potential, fertility rates, and cohort fertility. In the context of Australia's identity-first strategy, Christian Western Anglophone cultural primacy, and great power aspirations, Indo-Pacific hegemony with credible global leverage to shape normative orders, the 15 sub-elements of population are grouped into 6 coherent categories. The categories in order of importance for Australian national power are the ethno-cultural and religious composition. This is the supreme filter, identity first. Reproductive and demographic replacement, organic growth as a priority. Spatial distribution, decentralization and resilience. Demographic structure and vitality, workforce, military and family formation. Scale and growth dynamics, great power mass. Migration and external linkages. It's a carefully constrained tool, and you'll notice that is the last. These categories provide a clear, actionable dashboard for policy and enables precise monitoring and governance, especially at the county level in the cube root hierarchical Australian Republic, and I'll explain that cube root in a moment. Population remains the master strategic instrument for moral, sovereign, self-reliant Christian, Western, and militarily intimidating people. Quickly, cube root law. Tajapera's law with respect to political representation, and this is key. The cube root law proposed by political scientist Rain Tajapera in the 1970s is an empirical regularity that states the national legislature, the number of seats in the lower house or main representative assembly, tends to be approximately equal to the cube root of the population of the country. Why this law matters for political representation. Representation quality versus efficiency trade-off. Few representatives, members represent too many people, reduced accountability and connection to the constituents. Too many representatives, assembly becomes unwieldy, decision-making slows, and individual influence dilutes. Empirical robustness. Tajapera found this relationship holds surprisingly well across democracies of different sizes, cultures, and electoral systems. It has been validated over decades and remains one of the more reliable laws in political science. Its application to Australia's hierarchical constitutional republic. Right at every level of the 4-tier hierarchy, it optimizes representation, accountability, and subsidiarity. And subsidiarity is the concept that a group, an organization, should not assume the responsibilities that a subordinate element of that organization is capable of fulfilling themselves. So county councils between 50 to 100,000 people would have between 37 to 46 representatives per county. The cube root, 42 to 75,000 people. Governments of about 600,000 people, 84 representatives. State governments, 6 million people, 182 representatives. And a federal parliament of 42 with 348 representatives. Now this is key because the allegation of being overgoverned rears its ugly head. But in this model, maximum political power is transferred to the lowest possible level. The county councils are responsible more than they ever have been in Australia's history. And the responsibility and the span of scope of responsibility diminishes the higher you go. The critical evidence-based guideline for designing representative bodies so they remain functional, accountable, and human-scaled as population grows. It prevents both elite detachment, too few representatives, and parliamentary paralysis, too many representatives. The population sub-elements continued. 1. Ethno and religious composition. These are the core of identity first and social cohesion. Cultural, including historical and ancestral group composition, linguistic composition and major language group proportions, religious and confessional composition and affiliations. Strategic importance. Maintain a decisive Christian Western Anglophone majority, a target equal to or greater than 70% sustained. It directly determines national character, morale, moral formation, social trust, and summa virtus, supreme virtue cultivation, which I'll describe shortly. Rigorously to prevent ghettos or parallel societies. have a role in the moral or character development of a nation? Yes. According to Thomas G. West, the founding fathers of the United States believed the government had a clear responsibility to promote the moral and character development of its citizens. This was essential for sustaining a free republican government based on natural rights. In his book, The Political Theory of the American Founding, Natural Rights, Public Policy, and the Moral Conditions of Freedom, West argues that the founders viewed virtue and morality not as optional, but as necessary moral conditions of freedom. Necessary moral conditions of freedom. Republican self-government required citizens with specific character traits, such as justice, moderation, industry, self-restraint, courage, prudence, and to natural rights, so they could respect each other's rights, elect good leaders, obey laws, and defend liberty. Government's role in morality. The founders held that the government could rightly and prudently promote public education, religious belief, moral behavior, family formation, and civic identity to foster these virtues. Specific policies and means. They supported this through criminal law enforcement, public education, support for religion, political speeches and ceremonies, and laws on sex and marriage, viewed as key to forming good citizens in families. Why this matters. Without moral character, liberty would devolve into license, threatening the republic. As West notes, drawing on founders like Washington, virtue was linked to both public order, happiness, and private happiness. This reflects the founders' practical recognition that natural rights, republicanism, depends on a people capable of self-government. So the state had a legitimate, though limited and prudent interest in cultivating the necessary character. West presents this as a core, consistent element of their political theory. Six elements of the Australian summa virtus, supreme virtue. Moral courage and Christian character, fortitude and invincible spirit, prudence and intellectual excellence, technical and professional mastery, justice, temperance and civic responsibility, creative initiative and adaptive leadership. This concept of summa virtus, or supreme virtues, derived from the ancients in Greece and Rome, Stoic philosophy, and Christian foundations. Now imagine a nation where children were taught the value of these six core elements in every aspect of their life. Let's go through moral courage and Christian character. The foundational willingness to uphold truth, justice, and righteousness, regardless of cost. It flows from the love of God and neighbor, moral formation through grace and virtue, human dignity, subsidiarity, stewardship of creation, and sacrificial service. It elevates classical virtue with transcendent purpose and redemptive hope. This produces integrity, humility, and moral clarity in family, civic governance, and national life. Fortitude and invincible spirit. Physical, mental, and spiritual courage, the greatness and strength of a noble and invincible spirit. It includes self-mastery, resilience in adversity, living according to right reason and nature, indifference to external fortune, and duty to the greater whole. Spiritual excellence. Superior strategic judgment, foresight, and discernment. It integrates classical education in Western civilization and Christian thought with rigorous analysis of all aspects of life, essential for wise local governance and national strategy. Technical and professional mastery. Proficiency in vocation, professions, trades, engineering, agriculture, defense, manufacturing, leadership, or scholarship. Our honest and legitimate labors serve as a national forge, building disciplined excellence and productive capacity for sovereign self-reliance. Justice and responsibility. Rendering to each their due, to God, family, community, and the nation. It includes self-mastery, moderation, stewardship of resources, and decentralized ownership. Justice is expressed through subsidiarity in the hierarchical republic and recirculation of natural resources profits to the commonwealth. Creative and adaptive leadership. Spirit applied creatively to new challenges, encouraged by local autonomy in garden towns, entrepreneurial freedom, and a vibrant Christian culture that values freedom, innovation, and service. Australia's summa virtus. In essence, summa virtus, and that word might sound odd to the Australian ear, but it's part of your inheritance, your classical education, your Christian philosophy. In essence, the summa virtus is the living ideal of the Australian who is at once courageously moral in the Christian tradition, a self-reliant Western citizen, a skilled builder of national power, and a courageous defender of the realm. The complete person whose personal excellence underpins the nation's moral strength, sovereign independence, and strategic dominance. It is the decisive human factor that determines whether Australia can preserve its established identity while rising as a respected great power in the Indo-Pacific. Now, there are similar aspirations in other cultures, and these are important to note because our adversary has chosen to divide us at every turn, and yet, if we look, we will find similar aspirations with those that we are taught to hate. Now, are there elements of other cultures that we find unacceptable? Absolutely. But we must, if we are to survive as a nation, if we are to survive as a planet, we must look for and find those similar aspirations that we hold dear in others. In Judaism, tzedakah, righteousness, charity, and justice, and chesed, loving kindness and mercy, stand as central virtues. Acting with justice and compassion fulfills the covenant with God. Tikkun olam, repairing the world, reflects the highest ethical calling. Pursuit of holiness, kedusha, and ethical living through the mitzvot, the commandments, represent the summit of virtue. Truth, emet, and humility are also highly elevated. Islam, taqwa, God consciousness and piety, is often regarded as the highest virtue. Living with constant awareness of Allah leads to moral excellence. Ihsan, excellence and perfection, meaning worshipping Allah as you see Him and doing everything with beauty and sincerity. A hadith describes it as the pinnacle of faith. Mercy, Rahman, is fundamental, mirroring Allah's names, Al-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Justice, Adl, and honesty are also core. Hinduism, righteous duty, cosmic order, and moral law is the foundational concept. Living in accordance with one's dharma is the highest virtue. Himsa, non-violence, is frequently elevated as supreme, especially in later traditions. Other high virtues include satya, truth, karuna, compassion, and detachment. In the Bhagavad Gita, humility, non-violence, and equanimity are praised as divine qualities. The samurai code. The way of the warrior emphasizes a set of values as the path to supreme personal excellence and honor. Core virtues typically include ji, rectitude and justice, yu, courage, jin, benevolence, rei, respect and politeness, makato, sincerity, meyo, honor, higi, loyalty, jisei, self-control. The ideal is perfectly balanced warrior who achieves moral and martial mastery. Irish and Scottish, the Celtic and Gaelic traditions. Celtic ethics were more tribal, heroic, and community-oriented, drawn from the sages, the Brown laws, and folklore. Honour and integrity, central to personal and clan reputation. Courage and bravery in battle or adversity. Hospitality, sacred duty to welcome strangers and guests. Wisdom, justice, loyalty, and truth. Other traits, perseverance, generosity, and piety, respect for the sacred. In Scottish Gaelic traditions, similar virtues appear in clan loyalty, stoic endurance, and poetic wisdom. Confucianism is the highest and most central virtue, often translated as benevolence, humaneness, compassion, or the essence of being truly human. Confucius described it as the foundation of all moral excellence, and achieving Ren was the ultimate goal of self-cultivation. Sikhism living is higher than truth itself. Virtues include compassion, contentment, and equality. Sikhism places emphasis on ethical living as the path to union with the divine. One, truth through daily actions, aligning thoughts, words, and deeds with divine will. Truthful living, Satyara, or honest, righteous living, is holistic. It integrates spiritual awareness with practical ethics. As you can see, we have more in common with each other than we know. It has been intentionally hidden from us, with our differences highlighted in living color. We, once again, if we are to survive as a nation and as a planet, must look for and work with the similar traits in others that we value in ourselves. Population and sub-elements continued. 2. Reproductive and demographic replacement, organic growth priority. Reproductive and demographic replacement potential, fertility rates and cohort fertility. The strategic importance, this is the highest priority organic growth mechanism. It focuses on achieving and sustaining a total fertility rate of equal to or greater than 2.1, but ideally 2.4 to 2.8 amongst Christian Western families through natural increase. It is the preferred method for maintaining long-term demographic momentum while preserving identity first. Strong emphasis on completed cohort fertility, CCF, family formation, and multi-child households in decentralized towns. Completed cohort fertility, also known as completed fertility, is a precise demographic measure that shows the actual average number of children born to a specific group of women by the end of their productive lifespan. Although CCF, as seen in recent Australian cohorts, signals long-term population decline or heavy dependence on migration. Rising CCF in targeted groups, Christian families in decentralized garden towns, provides genuine identity-preserving momentum, distribution and settlement patterns. These directly support decentralization, self-reliance and military resilience, overall population density and carrying capacity implications, urban-rural population distribution and balance, regional and spatial distribution patterns within national territory, internal migration flows, and settlement concentration. The strategic importance, centric garden town model of 400 to 500 counties of 50 to 100,000 people, planned in advance and surrounded by a permanent belt of agricultural land. This supports the polycentric garden town model as adapted for Australia is a deliberate national settlement strategy that combines Ebenezer Howard's Garden City principles, which he wrote about in 1898, with a polycentric urban development. And people can be torn between town and country, but there are advantages to both. We want the advantages for all. Use infrastructure, dispersed basing on for full spectrum forces, carriers, Army Corps, etc., local moral communities, and maximum self-reliance at every level, town, region, and state. Demographic structure and vitality. These shape workforce capacity, dependency burdens, and long-term resilience. Age structure and distribution, including working age proportion, youth bulge and dependency ratios, and sex ratios and gender distribution across age cohorts. The strategic importance, balanced age pyramid and healthy sex ratios are essential for military manpower, economic productivity, family formation, and summa virtus transmission. Extreme aging, which undermines vitality, or youth bulges, which can strain cohesion. If you look at the diagrams there, you can see the age pyramid for Australia over the years 1911, 2000, 1911, 1961, 2000, and 2051 projections. The pyramid should be pyramid shaped, a wide base, providing large numbers to support the older population. But as you can see, we are projecting problems here. Scale and growth dynamics. These determine overall mass, momentum, and sustainability of the population. Total population size and scale, rate of population growth through natural increase, fertility, and mortality components, projected population trends and momentum, the strategic importance, optimal 35 to 50 million for achieving great power status, but risks measurable declines in key well-being metrics. And so the scale of our country, our goal should be this is Australia, should be between 35 to 50 million to achieve great power status. But how we achieve that is key. The well-being of the strong preference, 30 to 40 million to better protect well-being and achieve identity-first objectives. So that is now the preference, a population of no greater than 30 to 40 million. It defines the overall mass available for economic power, military manpower supporting a 10% GDP defense, which we anticipate. We are going to be using that massive investment in defense to grow the skills and character of this nation. And great power projection. Migration and external linkages. These control inflows, cultural compatibility, and external human capital. The net international migration rates and foreign-born population share, size, distribution, and engagement potential of overseas diaspora communities. The strategic importance, net migration must remain low volume and strictly selective. Cultural, religious compatibility plus full assimilation. Engagement serves as a soft power asset for great power influence, but never at the expense of domestic identity or cohesion. Sequenced and integrated strategies for optimizing population. 1. Sovereign demographic reclamation and identity protection strategy. Reassert full national control over population composition through prioritization of natural increase and highly selective values-aligned immigration. The advantages maximized. Presents the Christian, Western, Anglophone cultural cohesion, national morale, and social trust. The disadvantages mitigated. Prevents cultural fragmentation, parallel societies, and the erosion of national identity. 2. Pro-natist and family vitality strategy. Implement a comprehensive long-term national program to raise fertility to 2.5 to 3 plus children per woman through generous family incentives, housing support, zero tax policy, and cultural reinforcement of family as the core societal unit. The advantages maximized. Creates a youth population with optimal dependency ratios, strong human capital pipeline, and sustainable military recruitment base. Disadvantages mitigated. Reduces future aging crisis, welfare burden, and reliance on mass immigration. 3. Decentralized population redistribution and greenfield settlement strategy. Execute a 50 to 75-year national settlement plan to develop 150 to 300 self-reliant population centers of between 100,000 to 250,000 people, supported by 1,500 to 2,500 smaller rural towns in the 50,000 to 100,000 tier, prioritizing inland, northern, and resource-aligned greenfield sites. Manages maximized, leverages vast geography, optimizes natural resources, enhances national resilience, military defensibility, and decentralized economic power. Mitigated. Ends the dangerous coastal overconcentration, reduces vulnerability to single point failures, and counters urban social decay. Capital and strategic demographic alignment strategy. Direct education, skills training, health investment, and internal migration to align population quality and distribution with national power priorities. Defense industries, critical minerals, advanced manufacturing, agriculture, and STEM. Advantages maximized, converts demographic quantity into high-quality national power, productivity, innovation, and military strength. Disadvantages mitigated, prevents skill shortages, underemployment, and wasteful human capital mismatch. Diaspora mobilization and normative demographic projection strategy. Actively engage the global Australian diaspora for selective return migration and cultural reinforcement, while positioning Australia as a demographic and values-based model in the Indo-Pacific. Maximized, extends national influence, attracts high-value human capital, and supports the Indo-Pacific hegemony through aligned communities. This is mitigated, reduces brain drain, and converts overseas population into a strategic asset. The constitutional authority required. 1. New national identity and demography power. Explicit authority to protect and promote the Christian Western composition of the population. 2. Immigration and aliens power. Full sovereign control over entry, residency, citizenship, and deportation, ignoring globalist organizations such as the UN. Defense power, authority shape population distribution and skills for national security and military sustainment. External affairs power, authority for diaspora policy and demographic diplomacy. 5. Territories and settlement power, authority for new regions, counties, and planned communities. The constitutional amendments required. A new chapter on national identity and population, declare Australia a Christian Western republic and affirm that its demographic character is a core constitutional value to be actively preserved and strengthened. 2. Subsidiarity and decentralized settlement chapter. Entrench subsidiarity as a binding principle with population planning defaulting to county and regional levels. Once again, subsidiarity is the Christian Western concept that a subordinate element of an organization and its responsibilities should not be assumed by a superior element. Its final example of which is the individual rights count. Creation provisions recognize the natural family as the fundamental unit of society and authorize policies supporting natural population growth. Anti-fragmentation and social cohesion clauses prohibit policies that create cultural enclaves or undermine national social cohesion. Structure first rule. Constitutional requirement that any population increase, natural or migrant, must be matched by pre-existing or committed infrastructure and services. Referenda and local consent mechanisms require regional and county referenda for major new settlements or large-scale demographic changes. Once again, power to the people at the lowest possible level. Rights protection aligned with the spirit of the first 10 US constitutional amendments. Freedom of religion and association to support Christian community formation. Please note, selected non-Christian religions are permitted, of course, but all actions that have been in accordance with secular law, which is predicated on Christian morality. Property rights to enable widespread land ownership and family homesteading. Limits on central government power in demographic matters. Strategies, priorities, and constitutional measures create a coherent, identity-driven population system that turns Australia's people into its greatest strategic asset. Youthful, cohesive, self-reliant, and strategically positioned for long-term great power success. Analysis of population centres, and we're coming to the end now, but we're looking at the size of towns, and this is key. The best return on investment population centre sizes for Australia. Identity first, great power strategy. Current Australian population distribution, the national end state, and the goals of the Indo-Pacific hegemony plus global normative leverage. The following sizes offer the highest return on investment. So considering all our previous requirements, these return the best. 1. Population sizes of 100,000 to 250, the highest return on investment. Best balance for maximum well-being and power growth objectives. So we are balancing the individual and the family's well-being against the national objectives. To 100,000, very high, strong well-being outcomes and excellent for growth and resilience. 250,000 to 400,000, a high return on investment. Well-being requires careful management, but it's strong for secondary hubs that might be providing services and products to smaller sized population centres. 1,000 to 750,000, a moderate return on investment. Variable well-being, but good for regional service centres and rural support. 750,000 to 1 million, poor, declining well-being and limited return on new growth. 1 million plus, avoid, lowest well-being and major diseconomies of scale. What else? These questions always concern people that like living in small towns, and so they should. It's about the people coming first. Analysis of population centres of towns population centres less than 50,000, and have rounded the numbers. The number of towns and localities in this country between 1850 and 2050. There's 190 of 10,000 to 50,000, 88 of 5,000 to 10,000, 526 from 1,000 to 5,000, and 1,088 under 1,000 people. That's a total of 5 million people, and that's a big chunk of Australia's small population. In fact, it's 18%. So 18% of our population lives in these smaller towns, and most of them. So the plan for population centres less than 50,000 is to establish the physical automated cyber infrastructure and links to major centres so they have the benefits of living in a 21st century nation without the downside. That is their choice. Remember, it is a plan to decide and to act through their counties, their regions, and their states. The Constitution will ensure that maximum political power is pushed down to the lowest possible level, being the counties. Return on investment for those that want to see how it worked. The best ROI population centre sizes for Australia's identity first great power strategy. As we said, 100,000 to 250,000 top priority, highest return on investment. This is the well-being impact. This range emerges as the sweet spot. National data, the World Happiness Report, OECD, and Happy City Index show strong life satisfaction, high social support, and good work-life balance. Australian regional centres in this band, for example, Cairns, Townsville, Bendigo, Ballarat, Toowoomba, when well managed, consistently perform well on belonging and lower stress compared to capital cities. Strategic fit summary, optimal for the identity first and decentralised power. Excellent building block size for a decentralised Australia. Highly manageable, strong community identity, lower infrastructure strain. Perfect scale for full services, hospitals, technical education and light industry. Ideal for defence bases, resource processing and agricultural service hubs and education nodes. High resilience to shocks, for example, economic, military and environmental. Keep aligned with Christian Western values, the Summa Virtus, and subsidiary principles. Excellent for polycentric gardens town model. 100,000, very high return on investment. Wellbeing impact, strong wellbeing outcomes. Rural regional studies in developed countries frequently show these sizes outperform both very small villages and large cities on happiness metrics. Excellent cohesion, lower stress, strong community, walkability and nature access, strategic fit. Foundational county level for the hierarchical republic. Ideal for moral formation, family life and dual use defence infrastructure. Ideal base for polycentric gardens model. 250,000 to 400,000, that's a high return on investment. The wellbeing impact is good, with good wellbeing outcomes. Requires well planned with green belts and decentralised neighbourhoods. Wellbeing starts to decline though due to pressure from increased density. The strategic fit, secondary hubs for defence bases, resource processing, agricultural service and education. Capable of supporting more advanced industry and universities while remaining manageable. Size town, 400,000 to 750,000, the moderate return on investment. The wellbeing impact is variable. Wellbeing metrics decline noticeably above the 400 to 500,000 size. Congestion, reduced nature access, higher inequality perception, and weaker bonding social capital. Declining cohesion returns. The strategic fit, it's good for regional service centres and rural support, but it's capable of supporting more advanced services, industries and universities, fantastic. Supports self-reliance and economic power, but as you can see, the wellbeing impact is not good. 50 to 1 million, a very poor return on investment. The wellbeing impact, declining wellbeing outcomes. Noticeable drop in trust and belonging. The strategic fit, it's limited new growth and higher infrastructure strain. Avoid overgrowth in anything above 1 million. Low return on investment for new population, highest congestion, mental health strain and cohesion risks. Cities rank lower on several livability and wellbeing sub-indices despite economic strength. Less than 25,000 to 30,000. Limited economic diversity and services unless tied to specific defence resource roles. So they like living in small towns, but they don't get access to the services. But we can and will develop and establish physical automated cyber links between the smallest towns to major centres to redress that balance. Optimal strategy for implementation. Primary focus, aggressively develop and grow 150 to 300 centres in the 80,000 to 250,000 range over coming decades. This maximises well-being while delivering decentralised national power. The secondary focus, strengthen the 50 to 100,000 tier as foundational garden towns. Tie growth directly to natural resource endowments and processing, defensibility, military basing, agricultural food security zones, and decentralized energy production. Enforce strict infrastructure first plus cohesion first rules so population growth never outpaces services or social fabric. The conclusion: deliver the best combined return on investment for the identity first great power objectives while supporting the well-being outcomes and avoiding the diseconomies of megacities. The politicians will always tell you it's all too hard. No, it's not. Yes, there's a lot of detailed work to do, but it can be done. Quality and human scale communities outperform raw scale long-term national strength. This is the level of granularity, the intelligence which we must apply to these problems. It is absolutely doable, and we can create a little bit of heaven right here on Earth. We covered definitions and descriptions of national power, and we expanded upon that, the practical implications. We defined population as an element of national power and expand upon that. We spoke of the irreducible core and primary multiplier, foundational human substrate, and the living reservoir of people. We examined Australia's population strategies and policies, the sub-elements of population, the categories of population sub-elements, the sequence and integrated strategies for optimizing population, the constitutional authority and constitutional amendments required to do this. We analysed the population centre sizes so people knew that their needs were most important in the growth of this nation. Our rationale on the return on investment to see exactly how we achieved these conclusions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time, and we'll see you next week. Rebirth of a Great Nation, Episode 5, Economic Capacity. I'll leave a beautiful rendition on the piano of Australia's best known national song, Waltzing Matilda.
All right. Well, thank you very much, retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi of Australia One. Very powerful and important presentation. You can also follow and learn more about the greatness that awaits you, the 5 pillars of real leadership, Ricardo's 5th printing in this book. You can pick it up at wilkinsonpublishing.com.au. That's Wilkinson, WILIKON publishing.com.au, also available for you at amazon.com. I want to thank retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi for his tireless efforts on behalf of Australia and the rest of this world. And be sure to tune in every other Monday. Bossi Brees, Ricardo and I get caught up on the events of the day as they unfold. That's a wrap of this broadcast, this special broadcast with Ricardo Bossi. Here's an announcement about healthcare. Launched now officially this week at jmcbroadcasting.com. Stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.
The Truth About Health premieres this month as a weekly JMC Broadcasting production with Christy Lee as your show host. Christy Lee is an award-winning former mainstream news anchor and independent journalist with more than 20 years of experience in broadcasting. Honored as Best Anchor and Best Enterprise Reporting honors, she later anchored at a Fox affiliate in California before walking away from legacy media after witnessing its deepening lack of journalistic integrity and shift toward propaganda. Christy is a fearless voice for the voiceless and a staunch advocate for holding power accountable. She's been featured on Fox News, The Bongino Report, InfoWars, Lindell TV, and numerous independent platforms nationwide. She has interviewed high-profile figures including RFK Jr., Dr. Robert Malone, General Michael Flynn, Ron Paul, Carrie Lake, and many more. The Truth About Health premieres June 2026 as a weekly JMC Broadcasting production. This weekly broadcast features expert doctors, scientists, and healthcare professionals. We don't reject science, we go further in it. We go beyond symptoms, headlines, and hype, bringing you the truth about what actually heals the body. Thorough healthcare coverage, including new technologies, legislation, and justice, will also be addressed. Sign up for free at jmcbroadcasting.com and tune into The Truth About Health with Christy Lee, only on jmcbroadcasting.com.